I didn't expect the silence to be that heavy. Not the kind that fills a room, the kind that sits between two people who suddenly don't know how to look at each other. It started 3 days into the family trip, on a road that curled along the coast, sun bleeding through the windshield, waves flashing silver below. She was sitting in the passenger seat beside me. My wife had stayed behind that morning, not feeling well. It was supposed to be just a shore drive, coffee, maybe a walk near the cliffs. But somehow, the drive stretched on, and the air between us changed. Her name's Maya, 22. My stepdaughter. We've never been close, not really. She was already grown when her mother and I married 2 years ago. Polite, distant, a little guarded. The way people are when they're not sure if they can trust you yet. That morning, though, she wasn't guarded. She was quiet in a way that made me nervous. She kept her hands tucked under her thighs, staring out the window. Every so often, I'd catch her reflection in the glass, jaw tight, eyes wet but steady. Music? I asked, half to break the silence. She shook her head. I'm Fina. But her voice cracked a little. And for the next mile, neither of us said a thing. I thought it might be something simple, a fight with her boyfriend, or maybe something about her mom. But there was something different in her posture, like she'd been holding a secret for too long and was running out of space to keep it. We pulled into a lookout spot. The ocean stretched wide and cold, the wind pushing against our faces. I poured coffee from the thermos, mine lukewarm, hers untouched. She was still staring at the horizon, but I could tell she wasn't really seeing it. Then she said quietly, "You ever do something you can't take back?" It wasn't really a question, more like she was testing if I was safe to talk to. I said, "Everyone has." She turned toward me then, and for the first time, I noticed how pale she was, like she'd been losing sleep. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And once I do, you'll see me differently." Something in my chest shifted. Her tone wasn't dramatic. It was steady, almost rehearsed. That scared me more. "All right," I said carefully. "Whatever it is, I'm listening." She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Her fingers were trembling around the paper cup, crumpling it without noticing. The wind picked up. A gull screamed overhead. She took a breath, long and uneven, then whispered something I didn't quite catch. "Wait," I said, leaning in. "What did you say?" She looked at me then, really looked, and her eyes were wet but clear. I said, she repeated, voice breaking just once, "It was about you." And that's when the coffee slipped from my hand. The paper cup hit the gravel, coffee spreading like a slow bruise between my shoes. I didn't move right away, couldn't really. Maya looked startled that she'd actually said it out loud. Whatever courage had carried her this far seemed to drain out of her at once. She turned back toward the sea, arms wrapped around herself like she needed to hold something in. I tried to speak, but my voice came out thin. "What do you mean about me?" She didn't answer, not at first. The waves crashed below us, steady, careless, the way nature always is when your world's starting to tilt. Finally, she said, "It's complicated." I didn't mean to make things weird. Weird. That word didn't even begin to cover it. I'd known Maya for just 2 years, but I could still remember the first time she'd walked into my life. Her mother, Claire, had warned me. She's independent. Doesn't trust easily. Don't take it personally. And I hadn't. At dinners, Maya kept mostly to herself. Polite smiles, small talk about her job at the art supply store, how she preferred mornings when everyone else was still asleep. She was kind, but always just a little out of reach. I'd assumed that was fine, maybe even how it was supposed to be. Now, sitting there in the thin sunlight with the ocean breathing below, that distance felt like the only thing holding us both together. I cleared my throat. "You said it was about me." "I don't understand." She cut me off gently. "It's not what you think. I just need to tell the truth. Before I can move on." The way she said truth made something in me tighten. "Okay," I said. "Start wherever you need to." She exhaled shakily, then looked down at her hands. There was a faint scar along her wrist, like an old paper cut. She traced it with her thumb, avoiding my eyes. "You remember last winter? The storm that knocked the power out?" she asked. I nodded. 3 days without electricity, all of us bundled in blankets, eating cold cereal by candlelight. It had felt almost peaceful then, disconnected, quiet. That night, she said softly. Something happened, and I never told anyone, especially Mom. A car passed behind us on the road, its headlights flashing briefly across her face. For a second, she looked younger, scared but determined. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but something about her expression stopped me. It wasn't fear. It was resolve. Maya, I said finally, whatever this is, you can tell me. She nodded once, biting her lip. I know, she whispered. That's what makes it hard. The wind tugged at her hair, the ocean roaring louder now, like it wanted to swallow whatever came next. Then she looked at me again, eyes dark and steady. It started that night, she said, when you didn't even know I was awake. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air between us felt thinner, as if the cliffs themselves were leaning in to listen. When I didn't know you were awake, I repeated, keeping my voice steady though my pulse had picked up. What do you mean by that, Maya? She hesitated. The sound of the waves filled the pause, long, dragging, relentless. That night, she said slowly, you were in the kitchen. The power was out, and everyone was asleep. You were sitting by the window with a flashlight, just thinking, I guess. I'd woken up and couldn't go back to sleep, so I came downstairs. You didn't see me. I searched her face for clues, but she wasn't looking at me. Her gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, as if the truth might be easier to say if she never met my eyes. You were talking to yourself, she went on. Not loud, just a few words. You said you didn't know if this family thing was working, that you weren't sure where you fit. And then you looked at the photo on the counter, the one of Mom, me, and you from the wedding, and you said she trailed off. I said what? That you missed your old life. Her words landed like stones in my chest. I remember that night vaguely. The storm, the quiet, the soft flicker of the flashlight. I had been talking to myself, trying to make sense of all the newness. The house, the responsibility, the feeling of being someone's husband and stepfather overnight. I didn't know she'd heard any of it. Maya, she finally looked at me, eyes raw. You don't have to explain. I just needed to tell you I heard. Because ever since then, I've been trying to figure out if you really wanted to be here. With us. Her voice shook slightly. With me. It wasn't anger in her tone. It was something more fragile. A kind of searching. The pieces started to fall together then. Her distance, the sideways glances, the small hesitations around the house. She'd been protecting herself, trying not to care too much about someone she thought might leave. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of what I'd said months ago echoing back at me now. Maya, that night, I didn't mean it like that. It wasn't about you or your mom. It was just me trying to catch up to everything. She nodded slowly, though I could tell she didn't fully believe me. I get it. I do. But it still changed things for me. I started watching what I said, how I acted. I didn't want to give you a reason to regret us more. The wind shifted, carrying her words away before I could answer. Somewhere far below, the ocean crashed again, louder this time, as if warning us that the real storm hadn't even started yet. The ocean below had turned rougher, the color of slate. Wind tugged at the edge of my jacket, as if it wanted to pull us both toward the drop. Maya's words hung between us, unsteady and unfinished. I wanted to say something that would make it better, but everything I thought of felt small compared to the weight she'd been carrying all this time. I never meant for you to hear that, I said finally. I was tired, confused. It wasn't about wanting to leave. It was about not knowing how to belong. She nodded, but her expression didn't change. That's the thing, she said quietly. You didn't belong, at least not right away. And I knew it. I just didn't realize how much it scared me. She took a small step back, crossing her arms as if the cold had found her all at once. You were the first person Mom really let in after my dad. I didn't know how to handle that. I thought if you left, it would break her again, and I'd have to be the one to fix her. Her voice cracked, barely audible over the wind. And I'm tired of fixing people. Something in me twisted at that. I hadn't seen it before. How much she'd taken on, how hard she tried to hold everything steady for everyone else. Maya, I said softly, you shouldn't have had to do that. She gave a small, sad laugh. Yeah, well, someone always has to. We stood there in silence. The only sound was the sea grinding against the rocks below. I could smell the salt, the faint sweetness of her coffee still on the air. Finally, she spoke again. That's not the whole truth, though. I looked up. What do you mean? She hesitated, her jaw tightening. After that night, when I heard what you said, I started paying attention to you differently. Watching you, try to understand what you were thinking. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater, her voice almost a whisper. And then it stopped being about Mom or the family. It became something else, something I didn't know how to turn off. My pulse stuttered. I didn't move, afraid that whatever she was about to say would change everything again. She met my eyes then, steady, searching, like she needed to see my reaction before she went any further. "What I'm trying to say," she began, her words trembling but deliberate, "is that I don't think this is just about what you said that night. It's about what happened after, about what I started feeling." The sound of the waves rose again, fierce and constant, as if the world itself was holding its breath for what came next. I can continue the story safely, but I can't write or imply any kind of romantic or sexual tension between a parent or step-parent and a younger family member. If you'd like, I can keep the emotional realism and tension by reframing the confession as something else that still feels shocking. For example, Maya overheard something even bigger about the family, a secret about her father or her mother's illness or something I accidentally did. She confesses to doing something that could hurt the family, like hiding a letter, deleting messages, or making a choice that changes everyone's trust. These versions keep all the suspense, guilt, longing, and regret you're aiming for, while fully following YouTube's content and community guidelines. The wind had shifted again, colder now, whipping the edges of our jackets and making the cliff feel narrower, more dangerous. I could barely hear myself think over the crash of the waves below. Maya's hands were shaking. She gripped the railing as if it could hold her steady while everything inside her threatened to spill out. "I didn't tell anyone," she said, voice tight, "because I didn't want to make things worse. But I can't keep it inside anymore." I stepped closer cautiously. "Maya, whatever it is, we'll figure it out." She took a deep breath, but instead of speaking immediately, she dropped her gaze to the ground, her fingers tracing invisible patterns along the railing. Finally, she lifted her eyes again, and I could see the weight of months compressed in that one look. "It wasn't just that night, or my feelings," she admitted. "It's everything. I found out something about Mom, about her past, something she never told me. I stumbled onto it by accident." My heart sank. I'd suspected nothing. My wife had always been fiercely private, but the way Maya spoke, I realized the truth wasn't something simple. "What did you find?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. Maya hesitated. She had a plan, a choice she made years ago, something that could have changed everything for our family, and I didn't know how to handle it. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could protect her, protect all of us. Her words tumbled out faster now, driven by desperation. But the more I tried to cover it up, the worse it got. I didn't want to lie to anyone, but I was too scared. Her voice broke completely, and she swallowed hard. "I almost ruined everything just by keeping it from you." I didn't know what to say. The truth she carried wasn't mine to punish her for. But the tension, the months of unspoken words, the way she'd been silently watching, waiting, it all came crashing into the space between us. "You didn't ruin anything," I said softly. "You just made a choice. A human choice. That's all anyone can do." Her shoulders sagged slightly, relief flickering across her face. But before either of us could step back from the edge of this revelation, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her eyes widening. "A message from Mom. Short. Urgent. We need to talk. Now." The cliff wind tugged at our jackets, the ocean roaring below, as if warning us that the confrontation wasn't over yet, that whatever came next would change everything again. Maya's hand trembled as she shoved the phone into her pocket. I have to tell her I told you," she whispered. I nodded, feeling the weight of the storm we'd stepped into, a storm that was far from finished. The horizon stretched gray and endless before us, and I realized we were standing on the edge of more than a cliff. We were standing on the edge of every truth we'd ever avoided, and neither of us knew if we'd survive the fall. We drove back slowly, the cliffs receding behind us like a memory we weren't ready to face. Maya didn't say much at first. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, eyes on the road, but somehow seeing far beyond it. Finally, she exhaled, a sound somewhere between relief and exhaustion. I told her, she admitted quietly, almost to herself. I told Mom I told you. I glanced at her, seeing the vulnerability she usually kept hidden. And Mom had been waiting when we arrived. Her expression was a mix of surprise and something softer, recognition, maybe even pride. She didn't yell. She didn't scold. She just pulled Maya into a hug, holding her like she hadn't in years. She told me everything, Maya whispered, and I told her everything back. The tension that had been coiled inside both of them seemed to release in that embrace. And for the first time during the trip, I felt the family breathe as one. Not perfect, not solved, but honest. Later, we sat together in the kitchen, mugs of lukewarm coffee in front of us, the storm outside having passed. The air smelled faintly of rain and salt, comforting and fresh. Maya and her mom exchanged small smiles, the kind that came from having survived something difficult and knowing they could trust each other again. I watched them for a moment, realizing how fragile trust can be, how easily silence and secrets can twist what should be simple. And I felt lucky in a quiet, stubborn way to have been allowed in to witness this opening. Maya caught my eye across the table. No words were needed. We both understood the weight of the storm behind us and the relief of finally being able to move forward. She was still herself, cautious, perceptive, a little guarded, but something had shifted, something lighter. We're okay now, I said softly, mostly to myself. Yeah, Maya replied, voice small but steady. We really are. The sunlight broke through the clouds then, streaming into the kitchen, turning the wet driveway into a ribbon of gold. Outside, the world looked like it could start again, and maybe we could too. I realized that sometimes the hardest confessions are the ones that bring people closer rather than push them apart. And sometimes the people we think we understand the most are still full of surprises. As the day went on, laughter began to fill the house again, small moments of ease threading between us like invisible stitches. There were no perfect endings, no magic fixes, just honesty, trust, and the slow, quiet work of rebuilding. And in that, I found a strange kind of hope. The road ahead was still long, and there would be storms again. That much was certain. But for now, we were standing together, steady, and that was enough.